Dad moves in soon-to-be bride and she gets pregnant and demands I leave the house because she needs my room. I tell her, lady, I own the house. My dad's gold-digging fiancée moved in with her two little monsters. After she announced her pregnancy, she tried to kick me out of my own house. Her smug smile vanished when I told her I owned the place. What happened next was absolutely wild. Here's the whole crazy story. This whole nightmare started about 8 years ago when Mom died from breast cancer. I was Anna, just 13 years old, and Dad was completely destroyed. Nobody knew what to do with a grieving teenager, so it made perfect sense when Grandma and Grandpa offered their home. They lived about 30 minutes outside Denver on this beautiful 5-acre property with a classic Colorado ranch house. Nothing fancy but solid, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, huge kitchen, and this amazing wraparound porch that looked out toward the Rocky Mountains. After Mom passed, staying with my grandparents felt like the most natural thing in the world. Dad would visit every weekend and most holidays, but even as a kid, I noticed something unsettling about his behavior. He had this need to control everything. He'd show up Saturday mornings and immediately start reorganizing Grandpa's workshop, criticizing how Grandma maintained her garden, making decisions about my life without asking anyone's opinion. It was like he couldn't just visit, he had to dominate. My best friend Sarah lived just down the mountain road, so I wasn't isolated. We'd been inseparable since elementary school, building tree houses in the aspen groves and exploring every inch of those 5 acres together. But here's where the story gets interesting. Mom had been an only child, and I was an only child too. When Grandma and Grandpa started declining health-wise a few years back, guess who inherited everything? That's right, little old me got the house, the land, Grandpa's beat-up Chevy pickup that somehow still runs, and a decent savings account they'd been quietly building for decades. Dad had used Mom's life insurance money to renovate parts of the house over the years, new roof, updated kitchen, refinished hardwood floors. But he acted like he was doing me this incredible favor, like I should be eternally grateful for his investment in the place. I found out about the inheritance when the estate lawyer called me right after Grandpa's funeral. Dad was standing in the kitchen when I took that call, and I'll never forget the look on his face when he realized I now owned the house we were all living in. Not embarrassment or surprise, more like annoyance, like I just made his life unnecessarily complicated by existing. Sarah was helping me sort through Grandpa's tools that day. After Dad walked away from that phone conversation, she just looked at me and said, "So you own this place now? Well, Christmas dinner is going to be awkward as hell." But we never talked about it. Dad just pretended that phone call never happened and kept acting like he was head of the household, controlling what we watched on TV, when I could have friends over, even what groceries we bought. He made all the decisions like this was his domain. About 2 years after Mom died, Dad started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just casual coffee dates and dinner meetups with women he'd meet online. I figured he deserved companionship after everything he'd been through. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, and Dad drops this massive bomb on me. He's got a serious girlfriend, a 32-year-old elementary school teacher named Brittany, who comes complete with 2 kids under 10 and enough emotional baggage to stock a therapy practice for years. Little did I know, this woman was about to turn my entire world upside down. Brittany had this whole trendy suburban mom thing going on, drove a pristine white Range Rover, wore expensive athleisure outfits everywhere, and had very strong opinions about organic everything that she'd share whether you wanted to hear them or not. Her kids, Braden and Mackenzie, because of course they had names that sounded like a country club membership directory, were these perfectly groomed little sociopaths who could switch between angel and demon faster than you could blink. The first time Dad brought her to the house, she did this thing where she walked around taking mental inventory like she was already planning renovations. I caught her opening kitchen cabinets and checking expiration dates on our food. "Your grandmother had such interesting taste," she said, running her manicured fingers along Grandma's vintage floral wallpaper. "It's so authentic. Very lived in." The way she said lived in made it sound like a polite way of calling our home trashy, but Dad just ate it up. "Brittany has amazing design sense," he gushed like she just complimented the Sistine Chapel. "She's got so many wonderful ideas for improvements." Her kids were even worse. Braden, who looked about 8, spent the entire visit touching everything he wasn't supposed to while maintaining perfect eye contact with me, like he was testing boundaries. Mackenzie, the 6-year-old, accidentally knocked over Grandma's favorite succulent plant and then stared at me like it was my fault for putting it where she could reach it. When I mentioned the broken plant, Brittany just laughed it off. Oh, kids will be kids. They're just excited to be in such a big, beautiful house. They're not used to having so much space to explore and discover. Sarah came by that evening and caught the tail end of their visit. After they left, she looked around the living room where Brittany had helpfully repositioned some of Grandma's throw pillows and family photos. Well, she seems fun, Sarah said dryly. Nothing says, I'm definitely not planning to redecorate your entire life, like rearranging furniture during the first visit. But Dad was completely smitten. Started spending crazy money on dates, bought a whole new wardrobe, got his teeth professionally whitened, classic midlife crisis behavior, except instead of buying a motorcycle, he'd found himself a ready-made family that came with built-in validation and praise. Brittany played it absolutely perfectly. She asked his opinion on everything, deferred to his wisdom about parenting and life decisions, let him feel like the big, strong provider and protector. She had him wrapped around her finger within weeks. 3 months in, she was practically living here. Her expensive skincare products started appearing in Dad's bathroom. Her Range Rover lived in our driveway more than at her apartment. Braden and Mackenzie had claimed the guest room like they were planning to stay permanently. And those kids, Jesus, those kids went from perfectly behaved little angels to absolute demons the second they got comfortable in our space. Braden would accidentally break my stuff and act confused when I got upset. Mackenzie would sneak into my room when I wasn't home and mess with my things, then deny everything when confronted. But this was just the beginning of their master plan. By month 4, Brittany wasn't even pretending to be a grateful guest anymore. She transformed from appreciative girlfriend to lady of the manor faster than you could say gold digger, and Dad was completely blind to the manipulation. It started small, rearranging living room furniture while Dad was at work, then acting like it had always been that way. Replacing Grandma's dish towels with her own expensive organic cotton ones. Throwing away perfectly good food she didn't approve of and restocking our pantry with costly organic alternatives that cost 3 times as much. But the real power move was how she started treating me like some deadbeat relative who'd overstayed her welcome in my own home. Sweetie, could you try to keep your music down after 9 p.m.? She asked one Tuesday night while I was studying for midterms. The children need their sleep, and some of us have real jobs in the morning. Like being a college student in my own house was somehow less legitimate than teaching finger painting to 5-year-olds. Dad just nodded along like this was perfectly reasonable. She's right, Anna. We need to be considerate of everyone living here. Her kids got progressively worse too. Braden figured out exactly which buttons to push and started doing it systematically. He'd wait until I was on an important phone call or in the middle of studying, then start making noise or asking me ridiculous questions just to be disruptive. One afternoon, he asked why I didn't have a boyfriend. When I told him to mind his own business, he smugly informed me that his mom said it was because I lived with my dad like a total loser. Your mom says a lot of things, I told him. Most of them are complete bullshit. I'm telling, he yelled and ran off to find Brittany. 5 minutes later, Dad was in my room delivering a lecture about being a good role model and watching my language around children. Brittany stood behind him with this wounded expression that would have won her an Academy Award, explaining how inappropriate it was for me to use that kind of language with Braden. Dad's face went red with embarrassment. You need to apologize right now. For what? I asked. For telling the truth? For being disrespectful to Brittany and setting a terrible example for the kids, he demanded. I'm not apologizing for anything, I said firmly. That's when Brittany's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw the calculating look underneath all that fake sweetness. Maybe it's time you started acting like part of this family instead of some entitled teenager, she said coolly. That night, I found Mackenzie in my room again, this time going through my desk drawers like she was searching for something specific. What are you doing in here? I demanded. She looked up at me with those cold, calculating eyes that kids get when they're planning something malicious. Mommy said I could look for paper for my art project. Mommy doesn't get to give permission for my room. Get out. Now. You're mean, she said, but she was smiling when she said it. Mommy says you're just jealous because Daddy loves us more now. That's when I realized this wasn't just about moving in, this was war. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon when I returned from Sarah's house to find Brittany had completely rearranged my bedroom. My desk was in a different corner, my posters had been taken down and folded neatly on the dresser, and my bed was made with different sheets, her sheets. What the hell are you doing in here? I said when I found her in the hallway, looking satisfied with her handiwork. Language, she said automatically in that condescending preschool teacher voice. I was just organizing things a bit. Your room was starting to affect the energy of the entire house. You went into my room without permission and moved my stuff around. I knocked, but you weren't home. I thought you wouldn't mind. It looks so much better now, don't you think? Dad appeared from the kitchen like he'd been waiting for this exact confrontation. What's the problem here? She was trying to help. Maybe you should be grateful instead of starting arguments. I pointed out that she'd gone through my personal space without asking permission. Brittany jumped in with that practiced preschool teacher voice, explaining that this was a shared living space, and we all needed to be considerate of each other. My room was visible from the hallway, and frankly, it was bringing down the whole energy of the house. It's my room, I said firmly. Dad's jaw tightened. We all live here, and we all need to contribute to making it a pleasant environment for everyone. Brittany stepped forward with this wounded expression, saying she was just trying to help make this place feel more like a home for everyone. She was sorry if I felt like she'd overstepped, but maybe we could work together to find solutions that worked for the whole family. I don't want your help, I said clearly. I want you to stay out of my room and stop moving my stuff around. Watch your tone, young lady, Dad demanded. No. You people need to mind your own business and stop thinking you run this place. That's enough. You need to apologize to her right now. I looked at Brittany, who was standing there with this perfect victim expression, waiting for me to fold. Then I looked at Dad, who clearly expected me to back down and play along with their little power game. No. What did you just say? I said no. I'm not apologizing for being upset that someone went through my room without permission. Dad's face went purple. I was being completely unreasonable, he said. Brittany was trying to build a life here, and I was acting like a spoiled brat who couldn't handle sharing space with other people. Brittany put her hand on his arm in this supportive gesture and suggested that maybe we should all take a step back and cool off. She never meant to cause problems, she just wanted us all to be happy together. She was incredibly good at playing peacemaker while Dad did all her dirty work. I told them I was going to Sarah's and walked out. When I got back that night, there was a note taped to my door, House Rules for Respectful Cohabitation, with a list of expectations including 24-hour notice before having guests over, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and shared responsibility for common areas. 3 weeks later, everything exploded. 3 weeks after the House Rules incident, I was minding my own business on a Tuesday night, trying to write a paper for my psychology class. Dad had been home for exactly 2 hours and Brittany already had him moving furniture around because the flow wasn't right. They disappeared into his bedroom for about an hour, then called me into the living room for a family meeting. I figured maybe they were finally going to announce they were moving in together officially. Boy, was I wrong. Brittany delivered the news like she'd just been crowned Miss America. I'm pregnant. Dad was beaming like he'd just won the lottery. Brittany was glowing with this smug satisfaction that screamed, I've locked this down permanently. Braden and Mackenzie sat there like they'd been coached on the appropriate response, nodding and smiling on cue. I managed a polite, that's great. Congratulations. But Brittany wasn't done. She had this whole speech prepared, delivered with the kind of fake sweetness that makes your teeth hurt and the entitlement of someone who thought she just won the property lottery. We've been talking about our future, she started, and I could already tell this wasn't going to be good. With the baby coming, we're going to need to make some major changes around here. More space, better organization, a proper nursery, adult living arrangements. Dad was nodding along like a bobblehead. Most people your age have moved out already. It's time for you to experience some real independence and responsibility. You want me to move out? I asked, though I already knew where this was heading. Brittany jumped in with this clearly rehearsed answer. There's this wonderful apartment complex downtown that caters to young professionals. Very safe, great amenities. I can even help you look at places. I know the rental market really well. When I asked about rent prices, she explained that most one-bedrooms in that area ran about $1,800 a month, but she'd seen some smaller studios for around $1,400. Really reasonable for someone in your situation. And what happens to this house? Well, Brittany continued with growing excitement, we have so many wonderful ideas for making it more functional for a growing family. The baby will need a proper nursery, and the kids need stable bedrooms. Your room would be perfect for the nursery, it gets the most morning light. My room. The room I'd lived in since I was 13. The room where I'd cried over Mom, studied for every major test, dreamed about my future. Also, Brittany added, my mother has graciously agreed to move in temporarily to help with the baby. She'll need the guest room, of course. I looked at Dad, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Nope. He was just sitting there nodding along to everything she said like a trained seal. So I decided to play along and see how far they'd push this. That's interesting. I'll need to think about it. Brittany's smile got noticeably tighter. Of course, sweetie. But you know, waiting too long would just limit everyone's options, so don't think too long. Okay, I said calmly. I texted Sarah immediately, emergency. Need you here ASAP. They're trying to evict me. But I had a secret weapon they didn't know about. 2 weeks after the pregnancy announcement, I came home from afternoon classes to find Brittany in my room with cardboard boxes, packing up my belongings like I'd already agreed to move out. Not just standing in the doorway this time, actually in my room, going through my closet, wrapping up Mom's framed pictures in newspaper, boxing up my books like she was preparing for a garage sale. What the hell are you doing? I asked. She looked up with this bright, innocent smile, like I'd just walked in on her organizing a charity drive. Hi, sweetie. I'm just helping you get started with packing. Your father and I decided it would be better to get you moved sooner rather than later, so I thought I'd give you a head start. My father and I decided. Nobody asked me what I decided. She maintained that sickeningly sweet tone. Well, honey, you've had 2 weeks to think about it, and really, what's there to think about? This is obviously the best solution for everyone. She held up one of Mom's framed pictures like she was examining it for flaws. Besides, some of this stuff probably needs updating anyway. You can't hold on to childhood things forever. Put that down and get out of my room. Now. Now, Anna, she said in that condescending preschool teacher voice. There's no need to be unpleasant. I'm trying to help you transition to adult living. This is exciting, your own place, real independence. When I repeated my demand for her to get out, Brittany set down the picture and straightened up. For the first time since I'd met her, the mask completely dropped. Listen, little girl, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'm pregnant with your father's child. This house needs to work for a real family, not some overgrown teenager who can't handle the idea of growing up. You can either pack your stuff like an adult, or I can have your father explain why this isn't negotiable anymore. This isn't your house. You don't get to pack my stuff. Actually, she said, picking up another box and continuing like I hadn't spoken, your father and I have discussed this extensively. We've already put a deposit down on an apartment, and you're moving out this weekend. The movers come Monday to pick up your things. Movers. They'd hired movers for my belongings without asking me. You can't do this, I said. We already did. The lease is signed, the deposit is paid, and frankly, you should be grateful we're handling all the logistics. Most parents would make their children figure this out on their own. That's when Dad walked in, and I could tell from his expression that he knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't Brittany going rogue, this was their plan all along. Dad, what the hell is this? We decided it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off, he said. You've been dragging your feet on this decision, so we made it for you. You made it for me. Look, this is happening whether you like it or not. You can either be mature about it and work with us, or you can throw a tantrum. But either way, you're moving out this weekend. That's when I dropped the bomb that changed everything. I looked between them, Dad standing there like he was delivering some tough love life lesson, Brittany smirking behind him like she just won the lottery. They'd obviously planned this whole manipulation together. What happens if I refuse? I asked. Dad's face went hard. Then we pack your stuff for you and put it in storage. You're an adult now, and it's time you started acting like one. This house is for families, not overgrown kids who can't handle change. Overgrown kids. My own father called me an overgrown kid for not wanting to be evicted from my own house. Brittany helpfully added that I had until Sunday. The cleaning service needs time to prepare the room for the nursery furniture delivery. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Could you say that again about moving me out of this house? Dad's face went red. Put that away. This is a family discussion, not some social media drama. I kept recording. Just to clarify, you're evicting me from this house. The house that belongs to me. Brittany snapped that it belonged to this family, and families make decisions together. I didn't get to hold everyone hostage because of some paperwork technicality. Paperwork technicality. Property ownership was a paperwork technicality. Dad, whose name is on the deed to this house? Pure, awkward silence. I could see Dad realizing he'd never actually checked the paperwork from when Grandpa died. When he finally admitted that legally yes, the house was in my name, but started to say but, I cut him off. There's no but. Legally, this is my house, and you just told me you were evicting me from my own property. That's when Brittany finally understood what was happening, and her face went through about 6 different emotions before settling on barely controlled panic. That can't be right, she said slowly. You're just a student. This student owns the house. I showed her the phone screen still recording. Inherited it from my grandparents when they died. House, land, everything. All mine. Brittany sat down hard on my bed, still holding one of my boxed-up books. But your father, he pays for everything. Utilities, upkeep, renovations. Yeah, on my property. Like a tenant. He used Mom's life insurance money to improve my house. The color drained completely from her face as she realized her entire master plan had just imploded spectacularly. So when you decided to evict me from my own house and turn my bedroom into your nursery without asking. I let that hang in the air. Yeah, that's not going to fly. Dad was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had that dangerous edge it got when he was really pissed off. Fine. It's your house. But you're still 21 years old, you're still my daughter, and you're still going to do what I tell you to do. Actually no, I'm not. He said we'd see about that and walked out. Brittany stayed sitting on my bed, staring at the boxes of my stuff she'd been packing like they were evidence of a crime. This isn't over, she said with pure hatred in her voice. Good luck with that, I replied, and started making some very important phone calls. 3 months later, they were both gone, and I learned the truth about that pregnancy, but that's another story entirely.